Oh, good morning again, and I'm back. And if you're watching on Facebook, it may be that you're experiencing some problems. It is not true of YouTube or LinkedIn. Um, Unfortunately, as I'm only me here this morning until John arrives, so I can't actually look at what the problem is. So I hope it's not inconveniencing you, but you can switch to YouTube, and I'm actually looking at us on YouTube right this very second, so I know that it's okay. Right, where are we and what are we doing? Uh, um, Now, the other day I showed you a little clip, and I'm going to show it to you again because it's something which would be nice to bring back. And I mentioned in my last session that Rupert Lloyd Thomas, a Louisian and a great supporter of Mirador, now lives in Chichester, I believe. But he went across Canada in his right. Yes, I'm getting some advice on the technical aspects, which I can't do anything about until about 10:30. So I apologise for any inconvenience, and please go to YouTube if you wish to continue to watch us. Um, is Unfortunately, part of the problem is that over the years, we've had a large number of people pass through the gates of Mirador, and various people have set up accounts, and those accounts are still in their name. So I have no idea what the password is, and so on and so forth. And we do have now on board somebody who's an expert in these things and who has offered to rationalize it all. And in fact, I think if we've got 6 days, what we'll do is we'll start the rationalization process a little later on this morning. But do go to YouTube because we are perfectly okay on YouTube, and it can be seen and so on. Anyway, Rupert Lloyd Thomas is a fan, but Rupert performed a tremendous service to Lewis because he rejuvenated the Furl Hill climb, which has now apparently been kicked into touch again, which is a great pity. But let me give you a sample of what the Furl Hill climb was uh, really all about. I think this is a definitive issue. Yes, yeah. Well, a plethora of wonderful, wonderful machines. There's wonderful men in their racing machines, and there's so many of them. And that corner, by the way, is called colourfully Bo Peep Corner. And I think it's lovely. And what a wonderful occasion. And it's a great pity it's not taking place anymore. And I think we should. There are a number of things that are atrophying, and we get our act together at Mirador because we are the station of protest. We do protest a great deal. We got to put some teeth into it. We've got SOS going, Save Our Shellers, because that hotel is sitting rotting, and it's a historical hotel. It's a beautiful hotel, and it's sitting rotting, and it's a shame. I mean, not just a shame; it is a shame on the town. And the recent mayor, Matthew Bird, tried to do something about it. He made his mayoral task during his year in office, and unfortunately, nothing much has happened. As a result, we've really got to kick and scratch and yell so the authorities will do something about it. And the same with the Fell Hill Climb. It must not be allowed to pass into history. It started in the 1930s, and I think it was the Bentley owners to begin with. But as you can see, it spread its wings into uh, entertaining all sorts of wonderful, wonderful cars. And I haven't been able to speak to Rupert as to why the new demise, but I will, and we'll see whether we can actually get it cracking again. We must not let these things disappear, because they don't even disappear into history. They disappear into oblivion, to nothingness. Nobody knows that they took place, even though, as you can see, they are substantial in the main. So that's the Fell hill climb. Um, uh, I just picked up I just picked up the paper, the Times, and it's amazing how you get an opportunity to take a look at a piece of. My mouth is getting dry, by the way, because of Parkinson's, and I've eaten all my chocolate bars this morning. Hang on, have I got any left? No, I've eaten all my chocolate bars, so I've got nothing to actually wash out my mouth. So forgive me if I sound a little clogged up. It's one of those things that I cannot stop. It's part of the disease which is afflicting me. It affects 1 million or so people in this country. Some of us, it treats it bugger off. Others, it puts into despair. And I don't want to denigrate those people who despair when they find out that they've got it and they suffer. But I am at the bottom of the pile. I can't walk. I can barely stand. As you can see, sometimes I can't talk. It really has a go at me. But I'll be goddamned if it's really going to get me down. I'm going to fight it all the way. All the way. So I give it notice. Parkinson's, you're going to have to work very, very hard to get me and to stop me doing things. Very hard. Believe me. Anyway, forgive the somewhat plummy voice this morning, because that's what it's about. A dry mouth, which I try to liquidate, if you like it. Anyway, is one of the nice things about working in a team is you can have your little quiet moments. After we've finished, and sometimes we don't know what time we finish. In Mirador, sometimes we finish at 10 o'clock. Other times we finish at almost 12. We always start at 8 o'clock in the morning. And anyway, we are recorded. This morning we're having some problems with Facebook, apparently. We're okay here on YouTube. What was I saying? Yeah, I'll have to start again. Oh yes, we have our quiet moments, and after we go off the air, sometimes it's sort of about 11:15 or so. Our chief of staff, who is also the publican here, the host, Declan, sit and have our quiet moment. We have 15 minutes in quiet communion in which I sip a glass of cider and he actually works out the day's menus. And we have a very, it's a pleasant time because he is a very, very, very pleasant man, a very nice man indeed. And it's a joy and a pleasure to be around him. But yesterday, he switched on the telly because he's a great sportsman. And he switched on, and Leicestershire were playing Sussex. And Leicester was something like 220 for 7. And they'd got to make a total of 400 and so on. Huh. Easy peasy. But no, Dex said, there's this man Kimber. There's a bit of a thorn in their flesh. Leicester says, Kimber. So we watched for a little while, and we watched Kimber batting, and he did a marvelous job. He was hitting sixes and sevens and so on, and he was building a healthy score. Now, unfortunately, I had to leave before the match finished. I left the deck watching it. Whether, in fact, he, like me, were watching a piece of history, I have no idea. Because in the paper this morning, it's reported that Leicestershire's Louis Kimber struck 8 boundaries in an over that cost the England bowler, Ollie Robinson, a record 43 runs, the most expensive over in county championship history. Right? Nobody had ever scored 43 runs off an over before. Kimber hit 2 sixes, 6 fours, and a single, with 3 of the fours counting as 6 runs as they came off no balls. It helped Kimber to reach his 100, and he went on to score 243 off 127 balls. And this was on the final day of Leicester's game against Sussex at Hove, just down the road. Kimber reached his 200 from 100 balls, recording the fastest double 100 in the championship and the second fastest in all of first-class cricket. So history was really being made yesterday, and I was watching it. Chasing a target of 464, Kimber fell just short of dragging Leicestershire to victory. He was the last man out as Sussex won by 18 runs. I said to Dick, the way they're going, they could easily rack it up. And Dick, in his wisdom, because he's a cricketer, he understands it like that. But it damn near happened, and history was made, and just quite by accident, because we were having a nice, quiet moment or two before we were letting people into the pub to have their drink and watching the cricket. The other thing that is, let me give you the advertisement, the commercial, because during Euro 2024, you get a meal deal here with burger, chips, and a drink for just £15. It's a pretty damn good deal. I said to Dick, is this a good deal? Excuse me. Yes, he said, it is a very good deal. And so it is. I was going to tell you about the reaction of fans to the match the other night, but I won't. Because John Henty has arrived, and I'm going to let him in. Actually, you can watch me with my day job. I'm the doorman. Here I go. Ready or not? Over the length of the pub. Over the length of the pub. So, are we going to make it? We'll make it. We'll learn and repeat this disability. We are determined to beat this disability, aren't we?
Yes, entirely right. Perhaps you should enroll next door.
Yes, can you just see me
They love it.
It's,
I'm sure they fit you in somewhere,
yes,
as I say.
it's true that I've been gone.
I know.
Right. Good to see you.
Yes, absolutely, and well done for being here. I mean, the weather is
Yes, it's strange, isn't it?
it's fine at the moment.
The forecast
I know.
is the sun, and it's not there at all.
No.
Now,
Well,
I have
oops. Maybe that's probably I don't know.
great delight for you because here is Mr. Henty,
Good gracious.
and
You mean at this very moment we're live?
we are live.
Live.
There is Mr. Henty.
Oh yes. Over there and over
Yes.
here and over
Yes,
here, I suppose.
absolutely.
Over there, yes. I know this is the moment both of you have been waiting for. Live from Lewis. Well, relatively live, I would say. No more than that. I wouldn't want to push my luck. But yes, indeed. And it's nice to be welcomed, as they say. It's not always the case. Occasionally, no, not you again. I'm sorry. You any? Well, no, I don't. Can I see your credentials? I beg your pardon. No, when you have to show your credentials, well, I'm not showing them in here. Not in public. The last time I showed my credentials, I was arrested. Aha. So there we are.
Now, before we go any further, John, last Thursday you were off in Brighton performing various tasks.
Yes.
To do with.
I can't remember now.
One of the celebrations that you've got coming up. I was going to ask you to report back to us.
All right.
Because we want as many people there as possible.
Oh, we want 500 people at least.
Yes.
And another couple here. So why not? Absolutely right. It's going to be a busy afternoon, I suspect. Some of you will already noted in your diaries. More about diaries a bit later on, actually. Yes, if you have a diary, then look it up. It's a Sunday. It's the 11th of August. And it's going to be right in the very heart of Brighton. But buses are very conveniently close by. The train service is only 5 minutes away, of course, the railway station. It's in the Royal Pavilion grounds. Where else would you expect the royalty as such? The music hall royalty being Macmillan, the Appreciation Society. We have an annual garden party, a celebrity garden party most of the time. Celebrities are running a bit low these days, I have to say. Got any, excuse me, got any spare celebrities? No, I haven't. There's a bloke who appeared on Huey Green's programme once. Is that any good? No, I'm sorry, no, they've got to be current. No, talking talent, you see. We often talk about the potential of talent these days. And it brings me to, the whole world of music hall, Max Miller being part of it. Someone within the last 24 hours said to me that there are various appreciation societies for other people other than Max Miller. www.maxmiller.org. Check it out. And they said there's one for Arthur Asking. Good gracious. Said, really? Yes. They said it's worldwide. I'm not surprised. He was a very popular comedian. And also one for a man who used to be in a lot of films in the 1930s by the name of Will Hay.
Oh, yes.
Oh, the name.
Will Hay.
You see immediately. Exactly. He was the schoolmaster by and large, sort of crazy school. But he played other roles. He was a station master at a very, very odd railway station that was not approved by British Rail, I think. And he was a splendid, eccentric performer. And according to this source of mine, fairly reliable source, he said, they've got an enormous following for Will Hay, suggesting, what about Max Miller? And I said, well, hang on. Max Miller Appreciation Society, by and large, is flesh and blood, because we're actually human beings and we hold meetings and we get together occasionally. Witness August the 11th. Whereas these are vaguely just available on Facebook and various other media sources. Not the same thing. So you can't compare the two. But I did think this morning that I'd pay a small tribute to a small man, Arthur Ascot, and in so doing, I
Don't forget his daughter, Anthea.
Oh yeah, Anthea Ascot. Don't tell me you knew her.
I did indeed.
Oh, you see, you think this is all scripted, don't you, madam? Especially that lady in Goring, yes, I know, a regular of ours, and Brian, of course, there in South Ruislip. So Anthea, yes, she was a diminutive figure as well. Today's word, by the way, diminutive. It's a lovely word. Doesn't sum up him and me, but nevertheless, it sums up a lot of people. She was quite a character, never quite obviously in the same sphere as her father, who was internationally known, as we see, numerous Royal Command shows, and of course a particular show that some of us remember called Bandwagon, which featured Mr. Richard Stinky Murdoch. Stinky, what a name! Yes, what's your sick nickname? Stinker. That was it. Richard Stinker Murdoch. They wouldn't do that today, you see. There'd be objections, first of all. You can't discuss bodily functions here, etc., etc. Didn't bother with things like that in them days. And Arthur Ascot was special. Had a daughter called Anthea, absolutely. And also appeared in quite a few movies as well. Yes. And you mentioned one some time ago. I think you said it was the Ghost Train.
The Ghost Train.
You see?
Yes.
I don't forget these things.
No, indeed.
Well, absolutely. So I thought I may or may not. Who knows? We've had many happy mornings here on Mirador television, but I may have brought this little chap along before with me. I've got the old bag here. You can probably see the bag there. And in the bag,
oh my goodness gracious me.
There he is. There he is.
Hello, playmates.
Hello, playmates. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Yeah. Suddenly people are sitting up and saying, you know, it's not going to be such a bad day after all.
The sun came. Do you know the moment that Arthur appeared, yes, the sun came out?
Well, you know, that is providential. And I want to talk about that as well. Because I don't know, these people out there who are watching at the moment, bless you all, and you, Arthur, yes, he can stay here can he stay for a few moments? Would you mind? Yes. It's a sort of very small television company for small people. Oh, he said, that's good. Now, I'm not a ventriloquist, although actually I'm going to mention a ventriloquist in a moment. A man who is he's closely associated with us in the Max Miller Society. And I brought his photograph along today because I'd like to give him a bit of publicity. He's one of the nicest blokes in show business today. He didn't win Britain's Got Talent. He came fourth, and he's proud of the fact that he came fourth, actually, because he was far too talented, actually, to have won. I think put it that way. And his name is Steve Hewlett. And I may not have mentioned him in the past, and if so, I apologise. But he lives in Eastbourne, which is along the coast here from us in Lewis. And he is an absolutely nice guy. He's a member of the Water Rats and very proud to be.
Oh, gosh. Oh. Well, that is a real accolade to be a member of the Water Rats.
Entirely right. Yeah. Some very top people. Of course, the Crazy Gang and a whole range of them were members of the Water Rats. And it's still a thriving organisation. And it looks after, too, this is the wonderful part, it looks after ageing and former stars who need a little care and tenderness in their dotage, in their older years. And there's a place called Brinsworth House, which is in South London or to the south of London. And there they can live and they're looked after. And there was pictures very recently, only within the last few days, of Jimmy Tarbuck. Now, he's not staying there, but he was visiting to say hello to some of the residents, including a man that many of you would remember, and that was Mike Yarwood.
Oh, goodness gracious me, yeah.
Oh, absolutely top rate. There was never really a man who could, an impersonator, I'm sure, he may have another term for it, but he was an absolute legend, had his own show for quite a while, but the pressure did affect him, actually. And now he's in Brinsworth House, and there's a lovely picture of him with Jimmy Tarbuck and one or two other quite well-known, including, believe it or not, the son of Max Bygraves, whose name is Anthony. Max used to make lots of jokes about his son, Anthony, and Anthony is still around. And by the way, Max Bygraves, I don't know how many people know this, but actually he was called Max for one reason and one reason alone. Max Miller, beyond measure of doubt, using the same name, because at that time Miller was respected by all his fellow comedians. And so Max Bygraves became Max Bygraves.
Yeah.
So there's another interesting story. But this man that I mentioned here is a ventriloquist. And again, I have a lovely picture of him, together with, they all have to have, of course, their own, rather like this little chap. I don't do ventriloquism as such, although I could do. Couldn't you? Oh, I could, yes. And would it be very good? No, I don't think it would. You don't? No, I don't. You see? Ventriloquism, which I've always enjoyed it. But you've got to be very skilled to be able to do that. This man is enormously skilled. And there he is, camera. Can we see that? I think we can. That is a man called Steve Hewlett. And the character that he's got there is a fellow that I've met on the Palace Pier not so long ago, whose name is Arthur Lager. Arthur Lager, here he is, lovely. And you know what? I mean, basically, he's a cheeky chappy in himself. And so, whereas the very immaculate, suave, lovely debonair Steve Hewlett, let's hope he's watching today, he is perfect, whereas Arthur is a bit of a handful. Actually, literally a bit of a handful.
Oh, I remember.
Yes.
I remember.
Yeah.
Arthur, yes.
Yes. So Steve Hewlett and Arthur Lager. So credit to them as we celebrate, as we often do on a Thursday or a Wednesday or whenever it is, the whole wonderful thing about music hall. And so it should be celebrated. And that will be our garden party. Whether Steve is there, I don't know. Above all else, he's an enormously busy man. He's on, I don't know, does cruise boats. He's at various holiday camps. He often works for Butlins, for example, still going strong. And he is one of the nicest business people in show business. And I'm very happy to mention him today in the same light of Miller and Arthur Askey and Tommy Handy and all the various names that we...
All these people gave immeasurable pleasure.
Yeah.
They were so talented.
They were, yeah.
And they didn't really need any electronic stuff to help them.
No, entirely right. Absolutely right. They were in their own right. They were admired. And Royal Command shows, for example, really were. I mean, it's very strange. I was talking to a man very, very well steeped in show business and television only last night, believe it or not. And we were discussing the Palladium pantomimes. Once upon a time, the Palladium pantomimes in London, the London Palladium, were absolutely splendid affairs. They still are, but today they're all basically packaged and they're a sort of vehicle for Julian Clary. You either like Julian Clary's act or you don't. I don't particularly like it. And then there's a man called Nigel Havers who appears fairly regularly. Yes. Another man called Gary Wilmot. It's a sort of package, and I will say this, it's very successful. Above all else, the afternoon that I went to see a pantomime some time ago, maybe 3 years ago, it was packed. This was in the afternoon, a fairly pleasant autumnal afternoon, and it was packed. All coach parties, all coached in to London and Park.
Pantomime has stood up all right, hasn't it?
It's a what?
Stood up. Pantomime is still popular.
Oh, absolutely right.
Yeah.
So it is. But nevertheless, it wasn't pantomime as such. It was really an opportunity for Julian Clary to wear a whole range of different frocks and come up with the same joke throughout the entire evening. Not my sort of thing, I have to say. But there you are. The coach parties loved it, so you can't argue with that. And funnily enough, the lead at the pantomime coming up, you see, you get all the news here on Mirador, you know. You wouldn't know this without watching. There's a lady who is very, very popular on cruise boats and on television, mostly Channel 5. I think her name is Jane. Oh, dear, it's gone. But nevertheless, she's quite big. And she's a belter of songs. She belts out songs. And so she's going to be leading the Palladium pantomime this year. And I, for one, will probably not be there. You know, there's one other thing I want to mention, if I may.
If
we have the time,
We have plenty of time.
Well, time is the operative word here, in point of fact, because as you and I know better than most people, time does occasionally stand still, you see, rather like that. I do that just to keep him awake, really. It's one of our things we've discussed many times before, that suddenly, if you're interviewing someone in the middle of a conversation and it frightens the living daylights out of you. You didn't do that. I'm sorry, that man in Rusper suddenly, oh dear, something's happened to John Henty. Hello, 111. No. I'm perfectly okay, but I needed to make that point. I needed to you see, I'll stop doing that. Because it happened, funnily enough. I want to tell the story, if I may. It's a family story, but I think it's relevant to all our families, yours included. And that is that I have one family heirloom, you might say, at home, and it is a grandfather clock. Have I mentioned it before? Probably not. It's a grandfather clock, and it was made by a man called John Tasker. You can check it out if you want to. I think he was from Lincolnshire, but he was in a little village in Norfolk at the time called, oh boy, here we go. I think it's called Folkington. I could be wrong, but it was certainly there. And he was a very active, watchmaking and clockmaking was mega around the beginning of I think it was probably, never quite worked these things out. It was in about 1810, which is a very long time ago. And this lovely grandfather clock was made, and the very first owner of it was my great grandmother, whose name was Martha Hegbin, Hegbin. And how do I know that? Well, you can trace these things, for example. And the most remarkable thing, and I may have mentioned this before, on the inside door, as you go to see where the pendulum is ticking away like that, I noted just one obscure morning when I had the door open to wind it all up, I saw what I thought was words, and I finally assessed what those words were, and they were Hegbin. It was the name of my great grandmother. Wow, what a revelation that was. She married, Martha married. She had probably about 11 children. They did in those days, in point of fact. But the remarkable thing is that this grandfather clock, which is still with the family now in our house, was there at that time, and was might even have been a wedding present. Who knows? A remarkable story. John Tasker, the man himself, had ill health around 1815 and retired and handed the job over to someone else. Now, why am I mentioning it? Well, because you need to, rather like him and me, you need to try and have the occasional check. Right, absolutely. Just in case, to make sure that the old ticker is still going. It is still ticking. And grandfather, I religiously wind up grandfather, probably about every 6 days. It's a 6 or 7 days cycle. And I knew a good friend of ours, who we shall call John, because that was his name, follows, if you he is a man who's adept at fixing things. And not only that, in particular, he knows all about clocks and how they function. He happened to be visiting yesterday afternoon, and so I said, would you come and double check grandfather for me, please? Maybe do a little bit of oiling in places that I'm not even familiar with, and just see whether everything's fine. It's ticking away. So now, that was yesterday afternoon. In the morning, and this is uncanny, I cannot explain it, and it's genuine, I went just to make sure that grandfather, this was about 7:30 in the morning, I went there to check that everything was all right for the big day, and you won't believe this, but he'd stopped. Rapidly, it was not. And I can only describe that. I'm sure there's someone paranormal or whatever you want to call it, but that clock had been ticking probably for centuries and maintained by various members of our family And on the morning that he was scheduled for a checkup, it had stopped. Now you'll say, "Come on, John, you're making that up." No, I'm not. In fact, I just couldn't believe it. And I was writing my diary, and I just described it as uncanny. The end of the story is that, of course, by that time, it had stopped, and we'd lost track of time. But I did it. It's easy enough to get it swinging again, you see. And off it went. Then I had to correct the time, and then on the hour of 8:00, ding, 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 the reassuring sounds of it chiming 8:00. So I was so relieved. But how strange on that day.
Yes.
And later in the day, John did arrive together with some very special oil that he had in a little bag. And he said, "Have you got a paintbrush or a brush?" And then we actually lifted the lid off it. And he took the actual, this bit that swings like that. He worked on it. I would not go anywhere near it. But the most important thing, having done that and checked out as best he could, the remarkable thing is he put it all together again. And that I always admire.
Absolutely.
There's a program called The Repair Shop, where these people dismantle things and put that bit there and put that stuff in soda and acid and all the rest of it. And you think, well, I hope they remember where all those bits are about 30 pieces all scattered all over the table. Now, if I'd done that, I could have done that, but could I put it together again and get it to work? No way. So the happy story is that he spent, sweet man, this fellow called John, a lot of people called John, pretty good people, let's face it. And within less than an hour, he'd cleaned it, oiled it, and it was back ticking.
Its usual self. Yeah. Now, let me ask you, was this side of the family related to Henty the Brewers?
Yes, exactly. Yes, I know. People are saying, "Oh, look, come on, is this the John Henty show?" No, it isn't. No.
It is.
It isn't. Well, no, it isn't really. I'll tell you why. I mean, he may go on about Henty of plenty. And, ask my son, he'll say, "You love talking about yourself." No, it's not that. Honestly, the reason that I do it is because it relates to all of us. All of us have got probably bits and pieces from the past and need to look after them and all the rest of it. So that was why I mentioned it in the first place. And what did you say a few moments ago? See, I can't even remember what you said now. Dear, you said, I don't know.
No, it's a fascinating conversation.
Well, it is.
And I asked if these were related to the Brewers.
Oh, yes, exactly, the Brewers. Well, yes, that is the other part of the story. And the answer to that is no. In fact, there are very much two parts of the family, as we may have mentioned before. That is that the, shall we say, the more humble members of the Henty clan were to the east, hence, if you like, Norfolk, and then they moved further this way. And the rather wealthy ones, the brewers and the farmers and the bankers, they were bankers even here in Lewis, the Henty banking in Lewis, they were to the west, actually. And they're the ones, the family, of course, who sent boys off to Australia and with their, if you remember, of course, the sheep, the famous sheep.
Oh, yes.
What sheep are they called?
Yes. Can I just do one of my famous red herrings? Because you have just mentioned Australia.
I shouldn't have said
and a lot of this stuff, talking about Arthur Astley and so on, I find very comforting because he was in my experiences. And the last few days, I have been watching on YouTube programs about the Seekers.
About what?
The Seekers, the singing group. And the lady, an Australian lady, whose name I just can't remember offhand because I forget names, who became a legend in her own time. And she only just died, apparently. But I've been watching these and thinking, gosh, these are all in my time. And it seemed like my family. And they were Australian.
You're talking about the Seekers.
Seekers.
Yes, I remember them.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Judith Durham.
That's the one.
You see,
The very one.
oh, we're not just pretty faces. I heard that, but that was quite uncalled for. That man there is in Hurstpier Point. Shame on you, Hurstpier Point. Yes,
Yes.
Judith Durham,
Judith
lovely,
Durham.
lovely lady.
Absolutely. And
What a song.
and what a voice. Apparently, she got perfect pitch, which you and I are striving for to do the Whifflepoo song. But they were a marvelous group.
Yeah.
A marvelous group.
They were, and so worldwide of such. Of course, in America, it was the Mamas and the Papas with Mama Cass, I think she was known as. But certainly the Seekers were a sort of our equivalent, Commonwealth equivalent of the Mamas and the Papas.
Absolutely.
Wonderful group. And
Yeah.
the Carpenters, the lovely Carpenters. Oh, dear, oh, dear. Yeah, so we tend to get a bit sort of nostalgic, I must admit.
And why not?
Well, absolutely.
Yes.
Why not? You know, celebrating the good and trying and hoping that it'll be emulated in
Yes,
time. You
yes.
know, and the young people like our good friend Steve Hewlett. There is the future of the show business, and he goes from strength to strength, and encouraged by, and one of the reasons for the Max Miller Appreciation Society is basically to encourage people like him to carry on where others left off, where
Yes.
Donald Pears left off, for example.
But I mean, your son must appreciate that in talking about yourself, you bring a lot of these memories. This morning, I just found a little clip about driving across the Canadian prairies, because I lived in Canada for a long time. But it reminded me that in my very first year there, I helped build the Trans-Canada Highway as a labourer in the Rocky Mountains. And I was chased by a grizzly bear.
Yes, I believe you.
I'd forgotten that until I did this bit on the program.
Absolutely brilliant and a wonderful story. And I'll tell you what, grizzly bears are still around. And do you know how I know that? Because I met a lovely lady, and occasionally, very occasionally, this lady has access, is able to watch Mirador. Her name is Alice. I'll say no more than that. I met Alice, believe it or not, on a cruise or a voyage up the Norwegian coast. And she was there with her husband, a superman who worked on Canadian railways. He was a wonderful man. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. You see, once again, people will say this is all planned. No, it isn't. And that's a remarkable, that was hard work. That was.
Oh, absolutely.
I imagine you lost a few people working on it as well.
Actually, attempts before the bedrock, I mean, quite serious now, was a cemetery to several hundred Chinese labourers.
Absolutely.
Who had got an avalanche and killed them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the man I'm talking about, I've just remembered now his name. He's no longer with us now. Alice still is 90 plus. She lives in the Yukon. The reason that she's in the Yukon is because, I think I may have told you this before, but when the presidential elections in America were again rather as they are at the moment, we're not going to go there, I promise you. Nor are we going to talk about the British elections either, you'll be delighted to know. But when Bush was going for president, Alice was very anti. She didn't want to know, a bit like perhaps if you didn't want Donald Trump. And she said to us and to others, if Bush gets in, I'm getting out of America. And she lived on the West Coast. He got in, she moved. She moved and she went up there to in the wilds. And there, now she lives in the Yukon. Can't remember, but it's a famous town in the Yukon, and out of
Yellowknife or something like that.
Eh?
Yellowknife or something like that.
Yes, it could be. But the amazing thing is that she sends occasional pictures, and she can see a long, long way from out of her property. And on more than one occasion, there have been the images in this vast sprawl of a garden she has, grizzly bears actually there in her home.
Yes.
Bless you, Alice.
Yes.
That's that sort of friendship.
Well, you sparked just one other thing, because there is a book called simply Yukon, written by a Canadian journalist called Paul St. Pierre. And one of the interesting things is it was in the days of the gold rush, and people had to go up over the mountains. And the people who made fortunes weren't the gold miners, they were the people who sold them the baked beans.
Absolutely right. So, amazing stories, the Yukon and on gold, the lure of gold, which is still there today, let's face it, particularly in Africa and places like that. Well, there we are. Alice, Paul. Paul was a lovely man. Once again, we talk about entertaining, but the one great strength he had was he loved younger people. He loved mixing with younger people. He was a short chap, very, very well built, as you would expect, for the work that he did on the railway. And on little voyages that we made, on one we actually crossed over to Vancouver Island from that was on a boat across, a sort of ferry.
Yes.
And there were loads of students on board. It was a lovely day, and the sun was shining. And Paul always carried with him playing cards. He was an absolute genius. One, he could do marvelous card tricks, and two, he knew every possible easy-to-play card game. And he'd get these young people around him, and they'd be fascinated by his tricks. And then he would get them to. I had enormous praise for this man with the way that he handled entertained younger people. Yet he was then at least well into his 80s. Splendid man, Alice and Paul. Well, how nice to remember them in the context of people entertaining and being of value to other people, which is what it's all about, I suppose. Well,
I'm going to, before you go, I'm going to leave you with one little vignette.
Yes.
Is to show to younger viewers, don't get hooked on gold. Because there was a gold rush town called Barkerville in British Columbia in Canada, which at the height of the gold rush had several thousand people there. And now has 50 because the gold ran out. But the Barkerville Times in about 1850 said there is this little town that has opened up on the coast called Vancouver, but it will never amount to much. It's too far from Barkerville.
There's the message, I suppose. Holding on to memories and holding on to. Before I go, I just want to mention one little enterprise here in Lewis. This is where we are in Lewis, by the way, the Black Horse Pub here. Easy bus stop if you want to come and say hello. We love to see you any morning, but certainly on a Thursday morning. Somebody's going past the window there at the moment. Good morning to you. The one thing people have got in touch with me because they know that I had associations with Auction House here in Lewis, and there are still auctions in Lewis. And there is a shed where they used to hold these auctions, and it's a tin corrugated iron shed. And I really won't go into, we haven't the time to do it at the moment, but maybe on another occasion. And they're hoping to save this corrugated iron shed. Now you might say, why? And the reason is that it's got one heck of a history, which I won't go into. But basically, previous to being where it is and used as an auction house, it was used as a church, and it was in Seaford, which is probably about 15 miles or less from Lewis on the coast. And the thing is that it was used during the First World War, and a lot of soldiers and others were actually there and housed there. And it was a historical church. It was a tin church as such. And it's easily movable, Hence, it arrived here in Lewes, and they believe, and why should I doubt it? They think it could still be removed somewhere else, and then maybe it could pay tribute to the whole world recapturing maybe its time as a church, but also the whole business of buying and selling, collecting, in other words, which is what the auction house was here, with a man called Julian, wonderful man called Julian, who used to be the auctioneer for many years. He started as the auctioneer when it came to selling livestock in the town, and then he moved into furniture and all the other things, and we'll be celebrating that. Funnily enough, there is a date, and there is a date coming up, and it's not this weekend. I think it's at the beginning of next month, July, and there's going to be a Saturday open day at this hut, this tin hut.
Oh, wonderful.
I don't know which one it is. When is the election? It's on the
4th, July the 4th, Independence Day.
When is the election? Oh dear, it just shows how much interest I'm taking. Well, if you add on that is it's going to be a Thursday, is it?
I
don't know.
Figure out the day.
2, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think it's something like July the 9th. I could be wrong. I've got a big 9 staring at me at the moment, so maybe it's July the 9th. And they're going to have a sort of mini auction, and they're going to have memories, and anybody who can remember the auction house will be very welcome. And that's very close to the railway station here in Lewes, and there are jolly good train services too, aren't there?
Yes, there are.
Even today.
Yeah. John, could I suggest that since you're quite close to this, that you get hold of the organisers of this and invite them to join us next Thursday?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point. I can certainly try. Largely, the organisers seem to hide behind the usual screen, etc. But it's a jolly good thought, because it is a good story.
Yes, it is a good story.
It's a corrugated. People say, "Oh, I'm knocking it all down." What's the use of that? I think it was part of the glory of the place.
Absolutely.
And was it rusting? No, not much.
Up until me moving about 3 years ago, I had a chair which I bought from the moment I actually came to Lewes. Yeah.
Exactly. And by gum, I'll tell you what I bought there, since you mentioned it. I bought there, you won't believe this, I bought a chocolate vending machine. A sort of machine that you see
only
on
Henry can buy those sort of things.
Oh, goodness me. And I remember the auctioneer, Julian, lovely Julian, and he said at the time while he was selling it, he said, "I'm afraid, I have to tell you, there is no chocolate in the machine in point of fact." Did that bother me? No, it didn't. How much did you pay, John? I wouldn't say. I would think it was probably close on 200 quid. What? Somebody said, come on, it was history. It was history. And I'll tell you what, have I still got it? No, I haven't, because someone else up in the north saw a picture of it and they wanted it, and they had I think probably they had one of these exhibitions of railway stations or whatever, and they thought it would be perfectly placed there. So I did sell it to them at a bit of a profit, and that was thanks to this auction house that is no longer there, which is a shame.
Yes.
I've got to go, you see.
Well, what a pity, because we're full flow. We have gone down memory lane, turning into memory lane, turning into memory lane. Yes. And now get Arthur to say goodbye.
After the war.
Yes. What was his signature?
Who?
Arthur.
Oh, a big-hearted Arthur, they call me.
Yes, big-hearted Arthur. Yes.
Well, there he is.
There's
his heart. People don't believe this. That is quite nice, actually. I could do a bit of ventriloquism, because you get his arms all to work. Oh, dear John, I don't believe this. How long are you going to go on? Now, there we are. Hello, everybody. Hello, folks. Oh, yeah. See, isn't that amazing? And do you know, did you buy that at the auction house? No, you didn't, did you? I bought it actually, because the other thing about Lewes is I'm now about to discover, because I should be going down to the antique section, because I feel quite comfortable in the antique section, of course. One previous owner. I'm going down there now, and I bought it down there, actually. I don't think I paid very much for this little chap. He's lovely.
Yes,
Look at his glasses.
Yes.
Oh, he was famous for those glasses.
Yes.
And the hat. This was very much bandwagon.
Yes.
This was in the time of bandwagon.
And don't forget Anthea.
Oh, Anthea as well. God bless you. Yes. I don't think she's with us anymore.
No.
But they were lovely people, actually. Very much a family, as so often was. Oh, look, he's applauding. Oh, well done. Thank you, Arthur. You're lovely. Everybody, lovely to be here.
Yes.
Try and make it next Thursday. Who knows?
Yes. And let's try and get some people in from the auction house.
I'll certainly see
Yes.
what I can do. Can't
Yes.
promise, though.
Now, the one thing that I've got to do is gentlemen songsters off on a spree, doomed from here to eternity. God have mercy on such as we. Ba, ba, ba.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. I don't know.